And that's the main thing I want, Jones Plantation to sort of start smacking people in a direction where they start to recognize, in spite of their good intentions and what they've always believed, a whole lot of, basically decent, well-intentioned people are the ones empowering literally the worst people in the world.
Yep.
And I want people to stop being so sure that, well, my guy would save us all. My guy is good. If only my ideas were put into government and politics, then everything would be fixed. No.
You're listening to the Corbett Report.
Hi friends, James Corbett here, CorbettReport.com, coming to you in August of 2023, and I know what you've been thinking to yourselves recently. You've been thinking, it's been a long time since I heard about that Jones Plantation movie idea that Larken and Amanda Rose were talking about on the Corbett Report back in 2020. I wonder how that's coming. Well, if that is what you are thinking, boy, do I have some news and information for you, and more to the point, I have some people to relate that information to you, namely Larken and Amanda Rose. Larken, Amanda, thank you for joining us again.
Thanks for having us again.
Hey, Jim.
All right, so I guess the big news is, that Jones Plantation film you guys were talking about years ago, trying to get funding and kickstarting and get off the ground? Well, it's already done. A full-length, real-deal, honest-to-God feature film that is now available. And I guess to cut to the chase, why are you listening to us talk about it when you could be watching it yourself? So I suppose we'll direct people to the film website, which I will be linked up in the show notes so that you can just start watching the film right away. But if you are inclined to listen to a little bit about the film first, well, here's the other place you can do it. So the film is at jonesplantationfilm.com. The film is called Jones Plantation, and if you did miss our previous conversation, let's fill in some of the blanks for people about what this movie is about, what it's based on, how it came together, and ultimately what people are going to be seeing here.
Well, 12 years? I don't even remember how many years. Lots of years ago, I made a short little animated thing that's only like 10 or 12 minutes long that used the allegory of a slave plantation to sort of demonstrate some things about the world today. And it doesn't count as a spoiler to say this because you find this out very early on, whether you're watching the animated version or the movie. Basically, there's the antebellum South slave plantation, and the plantation owner is having some trouble with his slaves getting uppity and disobedient and all that unfortunate stuff. Unfortunate if you happen to be a psychotic slave owner. Fortunate if you like freedom, but whatever. And so he calls in a consultant of sorts to teach him how to better manage his human livestock in a way that isn't just about brute force, because brute force will only get you so far. If you're trying to control these strange creatures called human beings who tend to like freedom to one degree or another. And so it basically goes through the story of how this consultant, Mr. Smith, teaches Mr. Jones a much more effective way to enslave people that isn't just about physical threat and reward. And I guess that's the short version. There's lots of details we can get into, but that's sort of the crash course description.
Our director very much wants people to understand that this movie, he wants it to sort of mark the beginning of a genre that he hopes will be the first, one of the first of its kind. But he says, this is like at the vanguard of the American dissident cinema movement. And he wants dissident cinema to become a thing. And hopefully this will inspire more people. So if you want to know, the genre, this is starting its own genre.
This
is
genre.
Dissident cinema. That's the genre this is in. And the type of movie I would say psychological allegory is what this is.
I'm all for the idea of dissident cinema, so I certainly hope that this can start a trend and a movement. And hey, if recent events are anything to go by, it seems that independent films can have a very large, outsized effect even at the box office if people are behind them and supporting the message of the movie, like Sound of Freedom, of course, as we've seen over the course of this past summer. So let's see if Jones Plantation or similar films can similarly spark something in the minds of men and women out there. All right, let's pick it up from there. So again, if people haven't seen the original short animation, I think they should go back and at least familiarize themselves with that, because that's sort of the general story in a nutshell. And it's obviously an allegorical tale, as you say, about a plantation owner trying to find a better way to manage the slaves on his plantation by convincing them, you're not slaves anymore, you're workers, you're co-owners of this plantation project with me. And I think people in my audience, regardless of whether they've seen that or not, will already understand what this is talking about, what this is implying, what this is showing about the world that we're living in. And of course, I would assume that's ultimately the point of this story, this movie. It's not about what happened hundreds of years ago. It's about what is happening right now, and it's about decontextualizing that so that people can see it in a way that they've never seen it before. But let's start talking about some of the deeper the themes and meanings of this movie. First, I'd be interested to hear from your perspective, Larken, developing that 12-minute little short animation into a feature-length film script must have been quite the task. And I don't mean that in the sense of must be quite a task to write all of that, a 2-hour movie. No, I imagine it probably was, I'm going to guess, was much bigger at some point and probably had to be chopped down, because I can imagine you could really go to town with this and really elaborate. But tell us about that process of expanding this script out.
Yeah, exactly right, because it was there the moment that Andrew, the director, had the idea of making and doing it. First, it was, maybe we should make a little short thing out of it. And I was like, this isn't going to fit in short. Then he said, feature film. And yeah, the problem wasn't getting enough to fill a normal feature film. It was getting it down to a normal feature film. I believe the first draft of the script would have been about a 3-hour movie. Because there are so many things that can be explained and illustrated to people in the context of this particular plot that, I mean, if we had the money, we could make it a mini series, whatever else. But we settled on, okay, we'll make one movie, but it's going to be full length. But there are so many things about psychology and the way authoritarianism works and the way tyrants actually rise to power, not the comic book version. And like you said, the fact that it's put in the form of a fictional story, different time, different place, well, different place for some of us, same place for some of us, makes it so you can tell the story and people don't sort of feel personally on edge or attacked or defensive. It's just, this is a story about something that has nothing to do with you. And along the way, they figure out, oh, this has everything to do with us. Like this, every piece of this is about what's going on now. And so my first book, it's out of print at the moment, I'm working on the second edition, was called How to Be a Successful Tyrant, the Megalomaniac Manifesto, which describes how tyranny actually happens, not the Hollywood or the comic book version of tyrants, but how do nasty people actually gain power. And of course, people who listen to your channel have had many doses in understanding what they actually do, from the Prussian indoctrination system and Edward Bernays and all the mental manipulations. So to say there was plenty of material to work from to make a script is a massive understatement. There's about 10,000 years worth of material to work from. So trying to boil it down to I think it's really dang concentrated, the amount of stuff we got in there, the amount of points and little subplots and stuff. But yeah, chiseling it down to that size. And in fact, the shooting script that we had when we went to shoot it would have been another 30 or 40 minutes on top. So it got chopped down in the process of shooting too.
Yeah,
so
you were doing rewrites like every night.
Every night.
That you were on
because
set.
we know a lot of people's attention span is already, not great. And so we needed to keep it. I think the runtime now is 110 minutes. So it's not even 2 hours. And to me and to a lot of people I've talked to, it doesn't even feel that long. And
it doesn't.
I'm dying to hear your reaction and your assessment of it.
Oh, I absolutely agree. I mean, 2 hours, really? It didn't feel like that to me at all. It was, it seems very fast moving and condensed, and there's so much that takes place. It is impressive how much you managed to cram into here. And I do appreciate that. But It's interesting to think of it from the allegorical perspective, because this has got to be the only film or story in 2023 that's dealing about antebellum South and a plantation that really has nothing to do with slavery in that sense, but is more about an allegory about the political moment of our times, but not in the racial sense that I think would be. I'm assuming most of the audience will be trying to see this through the prism through. In a way, I wonder if that will be distracting to the audience, because the idea that this will be a movie about a plantation that isn't fundamentally about racism, it's about a different type of political oppression, is I don't know, it might be distracting for some audiences.
Well, it's funny because I think it's going to sort of fly under the radar for a lot of people who will assume, oh, another movie about how bad slavery is. And like, I think most sane people know that slavery is really, 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 really bad already. But if they start watching it thinking it's going to be the same thing they've seen in, 10 other slave movies, I'm okay with that. And pretty early on, you'll probably know what I'm talking about, but I'm not going to be specific to do a spoiler. Pretty early on, you realize, oh, this isn't about black and white. This isn't even about race. It's not about the black people are all good and the white people are all bad. Although, it takes place on a slave plantation. None of the white people are very good in it because generally speaking, you're not going to be a good person in that setting and not try to do something about it. But yeah, very early on, I think people are going to notice, whoa, this is not what I was expecting to see. And this is, getting into areas of thought that have nothing to do with what, 99% of slave movies are actually about, which doesn't really need to be retold, if you ask me. Because, yeah, we know that's evil. Nobody's saying that's good. But there's a depth way more important than just these people were mean to those people.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to be it's like a lot of film experiences. Some of the most famous films out there that were done by some of the most iconic or weird directors, the film genre is like slapping you in the face with what it is as you're going along. You're like, I don't know what film am I watching? What is this? And then like you're kind of getting like jarred around, and then you're sort of going, oh this. And those films tend to be more impactful because people have to like kind of curtail their expectations and actually stay present in the moment and stop expecting it to be something and just let it be what it is. And then they want to go back and rewatch it because they know that while they were getting slapped around, they weren't processing all the details. So then they want to go back and watch it again. So I feel like for a lot of people, if this isn't what they're expecting, they'll have that uncomfortable sort of shifting as they're watching it. Like, this isn't slavery. Okay, wait, what? Like, what's going on? And so it'll kind of make them have to like kind of back up, rewind, and go, wait, what am I watching? And
yeah, there's a number of things in the film that sort of like can hit you upside the head with a 2x4 when you're not expecting, like, what's going on? What is happening here? Which I didn't originally envision that. Like when I first started it, I was sort of picturing it as a serious drama, and that was kind of it, just a period piece thing. And Andrew really made it into something way more unique and sort of cult classic-ish, for lack of a better term. Yeah, that it has a bunch of weird stuff to it, that it isn't just, oh, here's some tale of, horrible suffering and injustice. I really like how it came out, and, we'll wait and see how much everybody else likes how it came out. But I love that I think it's going to catch the viewer off guard just kind of over and over again with things that happen. Some of them pretty weird, too.
Well, and I think one of the things that people should know if they have not seen the movie yet is on the budget that we were on, Andrew was like, our director was like, I don't think we can compete well at all with this budget in the genre of serious period piece films. And this is kind of going to be a different vibe film and a different type of story anyway. So let's go for its own weird genre and not bother trying to compete there, because this is an indie film on a indie budget.
And I think we accomplished weird pretty well.
Yeah, but I wouldn't want to oversell it for people who haven't seen the film. I think there are elements of the period drama that do work, but yeah, there are those moments that are also sort of out of left field, and wow, I wasn't expecting that. And I like the way that the film leads people into the allegory, because I imagine one of the fine lines that you have to walk is not to beat people over the head with the point. Okay, here is the point, and here is the person that represents this, and here is the person that represents that. I mean, a good way of doing this, I think, would be to flesh out the drama as real characters in real situations, and I think there's a nice way of leading people into it before they start to realize essentially what this is really about. And I like the way that happens. But then there are things that, and hopefully not a spoiler, but for example, the political campaign ads that sneak in here and other such things that really surprise people. Talk about that line of concealing and then revealing the real message of the movie.
It's so funny how much adversity and limited resources is the mother of invention. Like, I know that's not a saying that rolls off the tongue nicely, but those campaign ads were actually the idea of Andrew, because we didn't have enough footage from certain things to do it the way it was originally written in the script. And he's like, how do we convey this? And so there was a lot of that where we were forced to like make it up on the fly. But that was his idea. And when he first said it, I was like, what? Because when you hear somebody just say the words, it's like in the middle of a movie. What are you talking about? But then when you see it, it's, I mean, it like there have been several screenings and every time people just burst out laughing, which is another thing that I didn't expect when I started writing the script, is there are parts of it that are actually funny while not at all downplaying the evil. It's not, there's plenty of depiction of the true evil of authoritarianism, but somehow making it this weird, quirky thing that can be funny on occasion. Like I did not picture that, when I first sat down to write the script, but I love some of the, half accidental things that we had to come up with to make it work along the way. But that's a fine example of, by then, pretty much everybody, they're having the behind the scenes discussion of like, you two are going to, have your battle to see who can win the hearts and minds of the human livestock out there. I can say that because the trailer says that. It shows that line, so that doesn't count as a spoiler. But then when you hear it and you just get hit in the face with how obviously, this is about right now, I think people literally laugh because it's so obviously a condemnation of the ridiculous stuff people are watching right now and falling for right now, that nobody has to like tell them, like nobody's going to go, what do you mean? By the time it gets there, it's like, obviously this is about this. And
like all I have to do is say the phrase hair sniffing.
That
like,
too.
All I have to do, and like the whole theater, that's the fun thing about the theater experience. Like being in Tempe, Arizona with 300 people in a theater and just the whole theater erupts and you're like, that's because there's not a single person in here that doesn't get that joke.
They all know. But the thing I love about the movie is that so far from the feedback we've had from people who, they don't know me and they didn't know about this. Like I'm getting most of this secondhand from somebody who like, hey, I showed this to my family and my friends and whatever, is nobody has to feel defensive about it because it's not saying you're the bad, like you're the villain, unless somebody's like all the way a psychopath. Hey, I don't like how this portrays psychopaths.
Hey, I'm sympathetic with the villain here.
Right. I think you made Mr. Smith out to be the bad guy. Yeah, kind of. But every sane person, I'll just put it that way,
right,
can just watch it as a fictional story, and at the same time, they can't miss the parallels. Even if they're sort of, well, I tend to vote for this one, and like all these groups of people who normally would be mad at each other, like, the left and the right screaming at each other, your guys, this horrible, corrupt, blah, blah, blah. I think they can literally both watch this movie side by side and laugh at the same things, and then hopefully walk out of the theater going, damn it. Like, I recognize us in that movie, and we weren't the heroes, and we didn't know what the hell was going on.
Well, the political ads are a perfect example of the personal attack thing. Like, everyone's going to kind of recognize, like, everyone that still voted in the last few elections, like, there's a significant percentage of those people, like, holding their nose and voting because they thought that the vote might do something, but they could just barely get themselves to choke down voting for their own candidate because they know that they're all screwed up. And you're like,
Yeah, I mean, it is an interesting question to think I wonder who the average person would be identifying with in this film, because I know who I personally would identify with, and unfortunately it doesn't turn out well for that character, but, but yeah, I wonder what the average Joe Normie would be looking at.
And that's one of the weird things that I wanted, like I understood that early on. One of the things I want a lot of viewers to feel is not something that any other movie tries to make them feel, which is I want them to not be sure they would have been on the right side. Like the normal feel-good movie is rah, 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 the underdog won, yay, what's for dinner? I want people walking out of there going, I probably would have been one of the ones who fell for this and was cheering against the only people trying to like help me. And so I actually sort of want people slightly traumatized in that way. And I want the ideas rattling around inside their heads afterwards to realize, like, how much of that am I on the wrong side of while feeling all, self-righteous and, happily condemning the only people around who are actually like on my side and looking out for me. And instead, I'm like bickering. I'm falling for all the Mr. Smith stuff and bickering over which guy I want running things.
I think that's what sets this movie apart a little bit, is that it's going to make people not sure, like just the average person that watches it is going to be not sure which side they would fall on. And that's one of my complaints against some of even the like kind of good big budget Hollywood movies that were like, anti-authority in a way and pro the underdog. My complaint with them, like a great example is The Hunger Games, is the way that it's directed, the way that it's shot, the way that the story's told. The average person goes, yeah, go Katniss, and then they go home and they vote because they're very comfortable assuming that they would be Katniss in that world. They're obviously Katniss because the way it's written, you're not really made to see that really the average American should be identifying with the people in the Capitol, not with Katniss, because we'd actually more be likely to be the people in the Capitol that are like really overdone in their makeup and delusional and have no idea what's going on in Katniss's world. But the way it's written, everyone's like, yeah, go Katniss, and I identify as Katniss. I am Katniss, the underdog. And it's like,
Yeah, and a very sad reality is if all the decent people actually sided with freedom, we wouldn't have any of the problems we have now. They don't. Yeah. Most of the decent people are accidentally supporting evil because they don't know how the games work. And that's the main thing I want, Jones Plantation to sort of start smacking people in a direction where they start to recognize, in spite of their good intentions and what they've always believed, a whole lot of, basically decent, well-intentioned people are the ones empowering literally the worst people in the world. And I want people to stop being so sure that, well, my guy would save us all. My guy is good. If only my ideas were put into government and politics, then everything would be fixed. No.
Exactly. And literally the worst people in the world is a good thing to add there, because although, some of this is lighthearted and fun, but there are really quite dark moments in this movie that you don't shy away from the evil nature of what's going on here. And I do appreciate that, because I think the audience needs to be confronted with that to some extent.
Yeah. And it's even, I'll say this part because this part's in the trailer too, where Mr. Smith is explaining Mr. Jones. If you want real power, you have to be willing to do what most people consider unthinkable. And then he demonstrates that in certain ways in the movie that I won't specify at the moment. But I think that's one of the things that normal people, and you've talked about this yourself on your show, that normal people have a really hard time imagining that other things that look like human beings could be that psychotic and that callous and that lacking in empathy that they would literally commit mass murder if they thought they might get a political benefit out of it. And if all the decent people go, well, they wouldn't do that. They at least mean well, and we're just voting between like two different visions of how blah, blah, blah. If the decent people can't comprehend just how psycho and nasty people can be, if it really is unthinkable to them what those in power are capable of, that Mr. Smith says that's our greatest advantage, that most people can't comprehend that people like him even exist. And I want people to be shocked into thinking, maybe the guy I voted for really is capable. He isn't just, he means well, but he doesn't have the best plan, or like some weird, dumb little corruption. Like they get charged with, you had boxes of paper in the wrong place. Like if you think that's the worst they do, you really don't understand how government works. And so
or if you think that they're on different sides, like the left and right are really on against each other, and it's like the whole thing of this is a game, and there's a theater going on here.
And in the original, in the animated version, you only get the perspective from the workers watching what's going on the porch. Well, in the movie, because we have way more time to develop characters and what's going on, you get what they see, and then you get the discussions happening behind closed doors. So you get to see the whole game, and I hope people start to realize, yeah, our whole lives we've gotten to see this part of what they say when they're in front of a camera and a microphone.
Right.
But maybe some of this we're seeing in the movie, that's what's actually happening behind closed doors, in between when they come out and spew their BS at us. Yeah, they're actually doing that stuff. And just to get people started in the direction of being able to think about that, basically making the unthinkable into the thinkable for people, so they start to consider the possibility, could it really be this messed up? Yep, could be, and it is. So.
All right. Well, okay, I don't want to spoil too much of this by talking about it before people see it, so I hope people will go see it, jonesplantationfilm.com, and you can see the movie there, and I hope people will do so. But let's talk about the production aspect of this, because as you say, budgetary restraints it's not going to compete with some Hollywood blockbuster with $100 million budget, but it is a real deal feature film. And I can appreciate, although I've never made one myself, I can appreciate how much effort goes into this. And I think one of the things that really helps pull this off in a really incredible and effective way is the really stellar cast that takes part in this. And tell us about some of the people involved in this production.
Yeah, and that was awesome. And there were so many things about this that were just amazing. And part of me wants to not admit it until people see it, because then they hear, like, you pulled it off with that. For example, the cast, Andrew and I didn't meet most of the cast in person until we were at the shoot. And the shoot was 17 days for the whole movie. It was 2.5 weeks. Most of us hadn't met each other in person. He did phone interviews, and they sent in video auditions. And most of them, they had no idea who I was or anything about, voluntarism or all that. But they got the script, and they thought, yeah, this looks cool. And so to me, one of the first sort of test audiences was the actors themselves reading the script and going,
they don't know Larken.
Yeah, they don't know anything about me, which made it fun because and then I got to, because I was on set the whole time, I got to have little discussions here and there with like Maurice, who plays Mr. Smith, and then JJ plays Samuel, and little discussions here and there with some people on the crew and some people, and to get their impression and to see what things connect in their brain when we're in the process of shooting the thing. But I love the fact that, when I write a script, it's just words on paper. There's only so much personality you can convey in text. But so many of the cast members, even if they had little parts, they brought it to life and made it like distinctive characters with, personalities and making it real in a way that was it was so cool to watch, because, I would be sitting there watching them shoot a thing and go, I would actually check my script and go, I did write that, but holy smokes, I didn't, this is way more realistic and believable than just the words on paper. I had to check, because I'm like, did I write that? Because that back and forth sounded way more genuine in what they just filmed than in what I remember writing. And so they did such an awesome job making it real and making it human. And without that, the point would just totally fail. So these, we didn't have a budget for any, humongous movie stars, but I don't think it would have been any better if we did. Everyone in the cast did such an awesome job. And Maurice as Mr. Smith, just the perfect delivery, the perfect presence of just, and when Andrew and I saw his audition video that he sent us, however many, 3 years ago, I guess it was only 2 when we were at that point, we were like, oh, he's it. He can totally be Mr. Smith. And that's really important. If you don't get
absolutely, the movie stands
Smith.
or falls on Mr. Smith. If he can't deliver that convincingly, the whole movie falls. And he absolutely knocks it out of the park. Absolutely stellar performance. So,
yeah, he was awesome. And that you just can't, like, he is the main character, which is another weird thing, because in most movies, the villain isn't the main character. Right. Obviously not the good guy, but he is the crux of it, because he's the story we're trying to tell, is what's going on behind the scenes. And that has nothing to do with the good guys. Like, they come into it, there's Samuel is the actual hero, but the movie is about Mr. Smith, and to have that presence and delivery and to be believable, without that the movie would have been pointless.
And then Maurice came in with his audition, and all the auditions were done via Zoom, because this was during the scamdemic crap, so nobody could be in person. Maurice's audition basically stole the part from someone we assumed was our Mr. Smith. Like, we actually thought we had our Mr. Smith, and then Maurice sent that audition, and Andrew was like, I dreamed Mr. Smith. This guy is him. Like, he is the guy I pictured. And then Samuel came in and, like, landed, like, got off the plane, landed, and I guess the timing of everything, Larken and Andrew were like, you got to shoot that end scene, the most serious scene in the movie, and your speech, like, now. And then, like, so also, Samuel actually had to do, like, that speech, like, 3 times or something, and it got, like, rewritten. Like, the speech he had memorized, it got rewritten and handed to him, like, minutes before he had to do it or something like that. And he, like,
the last scene, the very last scene we recorded last, but the most dramatic scene, I won't give the specifics, in a certain room with a certain other individual. I think they shot that, like, the day JJ landed. JJ Green is Samuel. And he was so awesome at the part. And, the final climax scene where Samuel... that's where he has the most lines in a row. He already knew the general thing, but it was that morning that I handed him the final version of what he had to do, and he pulled it off flawlessly, like 3 times in a row. And that was like the sun was going down below the horizon, and the next morning everybody was scheduled to fly out. So we didn't have, the budget to keep them longer, or to, like, we were out. Like, if we didn't get that scene then, right there and then, there's no ending to the movie, which means there's no movie. And JJ pulled it off masterfully. And there were so many things like that just seemed like miracles that they happened at all. I was like, we have to get this shot because tomorrow we have to go over to there to do it. So it constantly felt like, one deadline after another. And everyone had to be a miracle to make it work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it took a bunch of miracle workers to make this movie. Yeah.
There's also a dramatic scene in the church. The first time they have to enforce something on somebody, I'll just put it that way. And that was, again, light was failing. We were running out of time. And that was shot handheld. I think they did it 2 or 3 times. But it's like, we're just going to handhold this thing and do. And it's a complex. It's a scene that normally you have people, like, choreographing the steps of, you go over here. And it was just like, just do it like it's real. Like, that guy's getting in trouble and people are moving around, and they did it like it had been rehearsed 100 times. It hadn't been rehearsed once.
Holy
that was
crap.
Just ready, go.
That scene is intense, too.
Yeah, I was standing in the back of the room just being, grouchy indentured servant. But it was intense being in that room just with them shooting it. Because they did such a good job. It was just like, oh, this is horrible to watch, because you can feel the tension even though it's all fake.
Yeah, that's interesting, because now that I think back to that scene, it's an incredibly intense scene, and to think that that they just pulled that off, just with little direction is incredible. But speaking of direction, you've mentioned him a few times. Let's talk a little bit about Andrew Treglia, the director producer of the film.
Yeah, he pulled off so many miracles. He's the reason this happened at all, and it was his idea for this to happen at all. He interviewed me down in Mexico
in 2020. In 2020.
For a completely different thing, and then in our interview, I think I mentioned the little Jones Plantation thing, and he watched it, and then at some point he contacted me and said, "What do you think about making this little thing into First it was make it into sort of a short. And then it very quickly turned into, like, we can't fit it in the short. We're going to need to make this a full-fledged movie. And then we did an Indiegogo just based on that. And, talk about another series of miracles, to have a whole bunch of people, some donating a few bucks, some donating like pretty big chunks.
Thousands.
Because we say, we want to make this movie. Like, you don't know how good it's going to be. I didn't know how good it was going to be.
Man.
Like, and I didn't even know that much about Andrew, but we had back and forth and we had talks in some random warehouse in Phoenix here. He happens to live in Phoenix, which is handy.
Yeah, we met at Anarchapulco. We had no idea that we were both Arizonans until partway through conversation with him, and we're like, "You're in Phoenix? We're in Phoenix. What? Okay. Well, we need to do stuff then."
Yeah, so we started throwing the script back and forth and meeting in this warehouse and starting to get visions of how this might go. And it didn't take long to realize the most important point by a mile is that I trust him not to butcher the message. Because there's one director in the world I would have trusted to do this, and it's Andrew. And it's not because he has a bunch of huge movies under his belt. He doesn't. It's because he understood the actual stinking point. And I wouldn't work with anybody who didn't. If it was somebody like, well, I know how to make movies, but...
Yeah, exactly. Can you imagine working with a
say.
Spielberg or something on a movie like this? It's not going to end up like this.
Right. It would not be the same way.
And one, I don't know if you know this story, but one story that I didn't know till recently is, Sylvester Stallone was offered $700,000 for the script to Rocky to sell it when he was living out of his van. And he was like, no, I'm going to play Rocky in my own movie, F off. And there was a big production company, like a SAG film production company, Screen Actors Guild level, like that saw this script early on. And Andrew told us that they saw the script and that they were like, oh yes, this script is amazing. We would love it. We'll take it. We'll make it a Black Lives Matter thing. We'll take it. And we're like,
it's like,
no. There's no amount of money you could offer us that we're going to let you do that to this movie. You can't have our script.
Andrew didn't bother to ask me because we're enough on board. He realized, no.
He just told us about it later. He's like, just so you know, this happened. And we're like, yeah, of course we would never. Yeah, no.
So thanks to all the people who supported it, Andrew and I own the thing. We were in charge. We didn't have to answer to some studio and argue with them about them trying to change everything.
Yep.
Andrew and I had to argue a little bit about logistics of, can we fit this in? No, this scene has to change and we're doing this on the fly. But never was there any disagreement about the message that we're actually saying. And that's just, it was funny because in a different interview that Andrew was on, he sort of turned to me and said, why did you trust me with this? You didn't really know me. And I could already tell he knew more about directing a movie than I did. And I knew he was on board with the message. And beyond that, it was just sort of taking a leap of faith. And the thing is, a huge number of people took a leap of faith to support this project without really knowing. Because making a movie can be anything from this brilliant, awesome thing to just a totally stupid waste of time. And a whole lot of indie movies are a total stupid waste of time. So the fact that many people were like, well, we're just going to put our trust in you and throw some money at you. And my favorite thing is how many people who supported it and who didn't said, okay, I wasn't nearly expecting it to look like a real movie, and it does, and that's kind of amazing with the budget we have.
I will confess, even myself, I'm like, wow, this is a real deal movie. This is awesome. It was a pleasant surprise. And yeah, a lot of people took that leap of faith, and here it is. It's actually manifested in the world. Wow, things can actually happen if people support them. There may be a message in there.
Yes, and I want to just applause to the Liberty Movement, because quite literally the Liberty Movement made this happen. So
yeah, because it's without, our budget was dinky in terms of a movie budget. It was I think
it's still $250,000.
Yeah, the total came out to that, including post-production. We didn't nearly have that much at the time we were shooting.
Yeah, we didn't have that.
So, to you and me, that's, I assume, lots of freaking money. To make a movie, that's the catering bill, literally, on most big budget pictures. And so pulling that off, and we shot it at two different locations that were one for interiors, one for exteriors. They were both former slave plantations. So that gave it an extra sort of creepy authenticity being there and going, this sort of crap actually happened right stinking here. But yeah, the number of miracles and the number of miracle workers includes all the people who donated it, who were just like, well, I hope you do a good job. Here's some support. I don't know what it's going to be. It's like, yeah, I don't know either, but like, we know what the vision is we're trying to tell. And after the shoot, which was traumatic, I mean, Andrew and I were all both like on the brink of death from sleep deprivation and stuff. Partly because I decided to write a novel at the same time of the Jones Plantation to put back in, right, to put back in all the scenes that don't fit in the movie. So it's they go together. But yeah, then I got so I'm doing rewrites for 2 or 3 hours of next day's shoots, and then working on the novel, which the rough draft was finished by the time the shoot was finished.
Well, as a writer, you were stressing out watching your script get butchered. So
yeah,
it was just
but I like that
to
part.
be clear, he's like quickly trying to capture everything that's getting cut. So he's like, might as well just write the novel alongside while I'm taking this out.
It does make sense.
Yeah.
Put it
And
over
it might
here.
account for the ornery attitude that you have as a character. I assume you could channel some of that on screen.
Channel my grouchiness.
You were so grouchy.
I do think it's appropriate that, like in the first scene, you have the director yelling at the screenwriter.
Yeah.
Because that's Jimmy Jack is
Seems about right, doesn't it? Yeah.
He kept telling me this whole time. He's like, there's a reason that usually writers are not allowed on set. This is one of them.
And the thing is, everything he had to do to butcher my script totally made it a better movie. So
yeah, it needed to
but
happen,
it's just, but I wanted that to still be in there. It's like, okay, make a novel.
Well, I'm glad to hear there is a novel version of this. When will that be available?
That's actually available for people to pre-order in bulk if they want, because we haven't sent it. It's finished. The artwork and the story's all finished. It's ready to go to the printers. It's thejonesplantation.com is the book where people can pre-order that. We're seeing if people want to do that at the beginning to see how big initial printing we can do. So, which I don't know how big that will or won't be, but that'll be going to the printers in a few weeks. And I don't really know of that happening before, where a movie and the book come out at almost the same time and written by the same people. Like,
yeah, usually
it's normal to have
first.
A book and then a movie 5 years later,
Yeah.
or 30
or the novelization of the movie by someone who had nothing to do with the movie.
Right. So these aren't competing. It's the same story. Yeah. There's a few little tweaks of the plot that have to happen in the novel. But, obviously a novel can have way more included in it, so it can get more into the discussions and the what's going through people's heads and stuff than a movie can. So everything that Andrew had to do to hack down to make it a movie, that's what needed to be to have the movie be what it needs to be. So I think the movie is very much what the movie needed to be, and the novel is very much what the novel needed to be. And they serve very different purposes, and I'm, pretty dang proud of both of them, and I think they go together well.
Sure.
So,
all right. Well, I'm looking forward to reading the novel now that I've seen the movie. But we could continue talking about this movie, the book, and perhaps more importantly, the underlying themes of these productions for many hours. But I venture to guess that if people aren't interested yet, they probably never will be. But for those people who are interested, tell people again how they can actually watch this film.
On jonesplantationfilm.com, you go there. The movie by itself is $10, and you pay for it, and you can watch whenever, and you can go back and watch it again, and bring in your friends and enemies and random strangers off the street, whoever, watch it again. I think for $15 you get the normal version plus the director's commentary that Andrew and I recorded, going through the whole movie and talking about some behind the scenes stuff, and you get to hear some of the horror stories that hopefully you couldn't tell by watching the movie, all the things we had to deal with. And then for $20 you get the movie and the launch party thing we did with a short thing ahead of the movie, and then almost, I think it was an hour and a half to 2 hours after the movie.
Q&A.
Yeah, Q&A, and talking to some of the actors in it, like Maurice, Mr. Smith is there. And
so if you missed the watch party on August 5th, you can still go to jonesplantationfilm.com if you didn't catch that, and pay $20 and be a part of that experience after the fact, the recorded experience.
So that's the online thing. I should also mention I don't know when this will come out, hopefully in time. On the 26th of August, there will be a screening in Dallas. And you can go to, if you go to my YouTube channel, I have the links under every video. because we'll be having a screening there, and not just showing the movie, but Andrew and I will be there, and you'll be there.
I'll be there.
Mr. Smith or Mr. Jones will be there, and I think some of the other cast will be there. I'm not saying their names because I'm not sure how many others are going to be there, but Lee Gallman, who did an awesome job of being Mr. Jones, he'll be there.
He's also a great cast member to mention because he did a spectacular job as Mr. Jones, and he has no prior acting experience.
Yeah.
He just...
What? Are you
Yes.
serious? No way.
None.
Yeah.
Like, he was just like,
None.
what? You are Mr. Jones. Why are you so good at this?
Yeah, he has
Wow.
He has a podcast called The Quash, and so he's one of the few cast members who actually was already on the same page, and he knows who I am and stuff like that. But he had never acted before, and Andrew chose him, and he was just freaking amazing. Such a memorable character.
Absolutely. That is mind-blowing to hear, honestly. That is an incredible first performance.
Yeah,
Right?
and
So good.
that same tense scene we were talking about, he and I basically wrote that on the drive over to the set in the morning because he was my ride because I didn't have a car. It's like a half-hour drive. So we're like, well, what if you do it this way? And he delivered that flawlessly, and yet he had no experience. So there's so much about this that it's kind of amazing we pulled it off, but I think a lot of people aren't going to be able to tell all the things that we didn't have going for us, but somehow miraculously worked. And
Right.
our Mr. Jones was definitely one of them that I didn't know he could act, but he did an outstanding job.
Amazing. Yeah. Well, sometimes the stars align, and apparently they did for this production, so... Excellent. Good. I hope people will check it out. And obviously the links will be in the show notes for people to do so if they didn't catch them as we plugged them here. But anything else you'd like to leave the audience with before we go?
I obviously don't expect people to be eager to show somebody else a movie if they haven't seen it. So for all the people sort of on board already, or, who know who I am and know who you are, and, you have, this audience with a bunch of people pretty aware of stuff that most of the world isn't. What I really hope is, I hope they think it's really cool and have fun watching it. But what I really hope is they see the power in having the rest of the world see this thing, to start them thinking about things they don't usually think about, start them questioning stuff and having discussions. So my first sort of hope is that lots of pro-freedom people watching go, rah, 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 that was awesome. And we're seeing a bunch of that. But my second, way more important hope is those same people go, I want to see what all my neighbors think of this, and my family and friends, because I think it's actually a way to introduce some of these ideas to people in a way that doesn't have to make them defensive and feel attacked. It's just a fictional story. And we've already gotten some of the feedback. So I really hope people like it enough and see the potential there to spread it around to everybody they know, friends, enemies, acquaintances, strangers.
And also, don't forget to hashtag we all live on Jones Plantation.
Yep.
All right.
That's our tagline, and that's what will make people want to watch it. If they're like, what's it about? You could just smirk, wink, and be like, we all live on Jones Plantation.
And that's all you get.
Excellent. All right, good words to end it on. Thank you guys for taking the time to do this. I'm excited to hear how people receive this and how it grows from here. I really do hope this is the start of some incredible new trend in dissident American cinema. But it's up to people out there to make that happen or not make it happen. So let's leave it in their hands. Amanda, Larken, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
You can control a man for a period with brute violence, but you cannot truly own a man unless he thinks your word is law and that he must obey and is virtuous for doing so.
We are losing money. A little more every month that goes by with no end in sight. They can sense weakness, and they are gonna smell blood like a gator to chum. They're gonna kill us both.
Mr. Scott said this man is a miracle worker. I think he can help us. You're a nigga.
Good people. My name is Mr. Smith. As of this very moment, you are now all free. Free at last.
From now on, we are all in this together.
This plantation will run on equality. I have created something called Jones Plantation credits.
We're gonna keep them up to their ears in debt.
Jimmy Jack will now be in charge of our new security team. is to protect this plantation and to serve all of you. You two are gonna have a little contest to see who can win the hearts and minds of the human livestock out there.
Bo Jones!
Most people are weak-minded to wield real power. You must be willing to do what most consider unthinkable.
What most people consider to be unthinkable is that men like you even exist.
That's our greatest advantage. As free people,
We work together for mutual benefits, pledging our love and loyalty to Jones Plantation.
We are not free.
I ain't no slave.
They have tricked you into thinking that choosing your own master is the same as being free.
you offer them a truth that they don't want. They want to feel safe.
There's a dark thing going on in this plantation.
Justice!
Every man deserves freedom, but freedom isn't free.
I'm Nathaniel Jones, and I approve this message. God bless you, and God bless this glorious...
Toodaloo.